Hello and welcome. This is your host, Philippa Burgess, and this is Muse and Metrics. This is part of our mentorship through the Women Techmaker Ambassadors Program. I kicked off as part of our International Women's Day campaign, which is part of the Cyber and Information Security Awareness Women Techmaker Ambassador led mentorship. It's a 6-month program. We kicked off in April, and we're so excited to culminate our activities in October as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I am so happy to have our guest today, Oghenetejiri. And we had the pleasure of interviewing last year. You were one of my guests on the Muse and Metrics podcast. So happy to have you back. And I really want to hear about your experience because now, a year later that we're speaking, you and I have both grown in the program because not only do we have the opportunity to mentor others, we are mentored. And we are given so many opportunities. I am suddenly starting to feel like the baby that's grabbed too many balls, like wants to cry when one of them runs away, and then I go chase it, but try not to drop all the other balls because I've got so much good stuff going on. I am very happy with all of my balls, but I'm like, wait a second, there's too many. And I have, but then I also have to be reminded, and I sometimes journal with ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, what's weird now is I've trained it to the point that it knows all about me. If you ask ChatGPT in a new chat, so what should I do today? It knows what my priorities are better than I do. And then I realize all the things I'm doing just reinforce each other and that they'll keep getting better. So they seem like a lot of things, but when you actually consolidate them, they're not that much. My primary is I'm a graduate student. And then my secondary is I love being an ambassador. And whether it's in Women Techmakers, and of course, being part of Google, we should be talking about Gemini as much as we are talking about ChatGPT. And I was at Google I/O, which is amazing. There was so much that we got to see there of what's coming next in Google technologies. And I'm excited to learn more on cloud. We'll talk about some of those opportunities. But now let me turn it over to you. So introduce yourself. And so happy to have you here.
My name is Oghenetejiri Agbodoroba. I'm a user experience designer by profession, but I'm also a Women Techmakers Ambassador. Additionally, as well, too, I'm one of the co-leads of the Google Developers Group, Worry, which I'm also a WTM Ambassador for. And I can tell you for a fact, like Philippa said, it's been an awesome experience since the last time we spoke, which is about a year right now.
Yeah.
And that's because even this year, I got to host a IW event in my community. It was amazing to see all the women come together. You could see people, it was their first time speaking on stage. You were sharing their experiences, and it was so inspiring because I knew at one point that was where I was. And so this was me having to give the opportunity to others as well too. And it was just impactful, seeing that they could come out of their shell, because many of them, they said they didn't believe they could do it, that they didn't believe they could speak to a large crowd, but they were able to do it. And that's what the Women Techmakers community is all about. Helping women who are in tech to thrive, giving them their own space, making them understand that they belong in tech as well. And that is what the community does. It gives you your own opportunity, gives you your own space, gives you resources in order for you to find yourself and become better in your career as well too. So it's so good to be back.
Excellent. Yeah, it is amazing. Now just tell me your story about how you got into tech, because you had mentorship, as I understand. Mentorship was a big part of your journey.
Yeah, you're right about that. Mentorship was a really big part of my journey. And every time I talk about my story into tech, I would not fail to talk about Charles Freeburn, because he was the first contact person I had that was within my community. And the funny thing was that I just reached out to him on Twitter, and I told him I was interested in tech and I didn't know how to go about it. And that was when he told me that I was the current lead of the Google Developers Group Worry community. And he told me he was going to add me to the group. I was going to see other people who were into tech, and I'll be able to decide which areas of tech I would want to focus on and grow from there. And that was how my journey began. I got into the community, and for someone who is new into tech, because I had a bit of graphics design experience, so that was majorly what I was doing. So whenever the community was hosting one event, I tend to create the publications for it. And so the DevFest for that year, which was DevFest 2019, they wanted more female speakers on their first, and they reached out to me, TJ, would you like to speak at their first? I was like, I haven't done this before. What am I going to speak on? And he was like, speak on what you do, speak on design. And that was the very first time I spoke on design. And after that experience, I can tell you I've spoken at a lot of design conferences. I've spoken I've even gone ahead to be a facilitator for design conferences as well. So that's how much the growth has been. And I can tell you for a fact, I'm enjoying it. I still remember when you were saying there were so many balls you had to handle. I got to that point as well. I was like, all of this is too much. How do I combine work, combine community, having to speak at conferences, and also having to write as well? So it got to a point where I was feeling like I was getting exhausted. And so I had to take a step back. I was like, okay, what am I going to let go of now and just focus? So I was able to do that. But I love to do everything I do, because at the later on, what I find interesting is the impact it makes on other people. Because right now, people look at me and they say, if TJ could make it out of this, then I can. If TJ can get here, then I can. So it's more like everything I'm doing, someone else is seeing me as a role model, someone else is seeing me as a mentor, and they want to work in that light. So in as much as possible, I try to do the best I can. And I can tell you for a fact, I'm enjoying the entire experience.
I love that. And I think one of the things, so you say, what do you want to give up? And I have to sort of say, for me, it's actually, I hit apply so much. If we get, I feel like once you get in a stream and you're getting the right emails and you get the right LinkedIn posts and the right Twitter, like opportunities are just there all the time. Like that's what I think I see. And I think that's what I'm trying to now curate for other people. It's like, hey, this is a great opportunity. It might not be something that fits on my plate right now, but hey, pay attention. Maybe you could use this. Maybe this could be a benefit to you. So I think that's one of the things I'm very good at, is seeing opportunity, but I'm realizing that not all opportunities need to be for me. I have enough. And I also, a lot of this I would say really the last 6 months, let me say before that, last fall, they offered us a Women Developers Academy. And I was thinking, oh, great, this is going to teach me how to code better, which was something that I was very much on my mind and my heart of like where I wanted to go forward. And it was not that at all. It was a public speaking course. And I think that's one of the things that I want to encourage everybody who's on our mentorship program. I know people are like, well, I just want the job in cybersecurity, or I just need to skill up in my tech skills for cybersecurity. But I also want to encourage everybody on being a speaker, being a leader, being able to talk about your love and skills in cybersecurity and information security, because that will serve you. That will help you become visible. That will help you build your network. That will help you find your advocates. And so finding your voice is to me as important as, because it's also part of the interview skill. It's also part of the getting that recommendation or finding that opportunity because you're in that network. So I think that those are the things that sort of surprised me. But on the other side of it, we also need to skill up. Skills are really important. And I got a wonderful opportunity because I apply lots of things. And it was to become a cesium certified developer. So for me, geospatial is at the middle of what I do. And then I have a very strong interest in cybersecurity and machine learning around geospatial, but I make maps and I make data maps. So data science, spatial data science. And with that, I got this opportunity to create all sorts of worlds in this 3D environment. And it was coding JavaScript for the first time. And thankfully we have things like ChatGPT and Gemini, and I'm able to ask, how do I code this? It's not going to code the whole thing. It can help me solve a problem. It can help me or troubleshoot a problem. But I didn't originally write any of that code. I went in and said, this is what I'm trying to do. This is the next step. Where do I start? And it didn't actually tell me that I needed to download Node.js on my computer to run JavaScript. I became a Microsoft Student Learn Ambassador, and they had me do all the JavaScript onboarding, and that someone in a video told me you need to download Node.js. And I was like, oh, okay. And once I did, all the script that just was not running, that looked perfect. And I was like, why is this not running? Why will this not load? Suddenly all started to run. But my quote for Valentine's Day this year was, "Roses are red, violets are blue, unexpected curly bracket on line 32." So I just disappeared. And I just literally for the last 6 months have just been coding. And then I'm currently through our community, I got the opportunity to learn about Code in Place, which I'm just finishing up right now, which is really taking my Python skills to the next level. I got a scholarship that I was able to share with our mentees from BWAS and Google for all of the Google Coursera certificates. So I've been working my way through those, which also has Google and data analytics and cybersecurity. And again, I have no lack of opportunities. And I think I see all this and I see the direction it's taking me. I'm seeing the opportunities that I'm getting from these opportunities. And I just want to share this with others. And I just want them to have that same level of joy and confidence that I have. Also knowing that I came from a place of not confidence and that it is possible when you start to put enough of the pieces together.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's another level of satisfaction where you are able to help other people who do not see this opportunity. Because oftentimes, I think because I tend to look for opportunities because I like to challenge myself a lot. And so oftentimes when I come across some opportunities, I was like, I don't think I want to do this right now. And I was like, okay, I think this person will be interested in this. And I was saying to them, like, oh, how did you come across this? I was actually thinking about this. So that satisfaction of having to help someone, I really love that as well too. Oftentimes, this visibility you spoke about, it's very important. And it's all about you having to share the information that you have. And one thing I believe people struggle with is they always tell themselves that I don't think I have what people want to listen to. If you're learning a new course, like you said just now, that you're doing a lot of stuff on coding, you've been coding a lot. So for someone who's a newbie coder can just be posting, oh, I learned how to code this today. I created the 3D environment and this was how the code was. I found it fascinating. You'll be surprised as the fact that people that are also into that line of profession, you just start connecting. And the moment you start connecting, that's what opens opportunities for you. You just get into that circle, you just get into that community, and the information just keeps going round and round as well too.
And that's my goal for our community in October when we participate in Cybersecurity Awareness Month, that we as a community make a dent in the conversation, that we individually and as a collectively are getting noticed, that we have something valuable to say. Because within the conversation of cyber and information security, we can say, okay, what do design and cyber have in common? Well, I pretty much trust that you have a lock on the door to your house. I trust that you might have a password on your phone and that a password on your computer and that you share files with your team and that you have to be aware of protecting your data, protecting the physical, the technical, and the administrative. So even if you're in design, it doesn't matter what your role in the company is. Everybody should be cyber security aware. And that the cybersecurity professionals among us, or whether they're starters or leaders, should be encouraging and having these conversations with everybody at the company and everybody in their lives about things that they need to do to understand that half of it is just us not doing things with the right process, procedure, or protocol. Like we make mistakes where we could just be sharing information with unauthorized people within our own company. But then the other half of it is there's actual real threat actors who are trying to access that information and have an agenda and are trying to elicit a ransom and just be chaos makers. And so we have to look at that. And the number one threat when it comes to threat actors is social engineering, because our good nature, our wanting to help people, doesn't understand that we are the target. Because they'll say, oh, I lost something. Can you help me? Oh, no problem. Because so-and-so referred me, or the boss sent me to you to have you help me. And so much of those things that are done so innocently. We just had a major breach. I believe it was last fall at the casinos in Las Vegas. And it was just because a customer facing person who's trained to be helpful was set up because they saw their LinkedIn profile. They kind of knew a little bit about them, and they were able to social engineer and get the access they needed because somebody thought they were doing their job to be helpful.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. I think there was one time I had this experience. I think that was the early days of getting into tech. You know, having to be a self-taught, you try to access a lot of information. When you see a Google Drive, you like, oh, they'll tell you, oh, you have contents and design here, and you can move from a beginner to advanced, and you just keep clicking, you just keep opening. And one of the days, I just got an email that we know what your password is. And they literally typed out my password for me. And they were like, if you would have to send us this amount of money. I was like, what's going on? I started thinking, what did I click on? Where did I log into? And I just couldn't remember. I just went ahead, all of my accounts, all of my socials, I changed all of my password and activated the two-factor authentication immediately. Because I was like, it was so surprising because it was the first time. And I was really not so tech savvy. So I was like, how did this happen? And all of that. And it was not until recently, during our last DEFES, one of our speakers was speaking on cybersecurity awareness. And he was telling us that even as little as a PDF file that is sent you via an email, that if you click on that file, the next person can have access to your computer. And he actually gave us a demonstration. He sent an email from the computer I was using to do the video into another computer. And the moment he clicked on it, we could see the entire room. Like his webcam was act, and I was like, oh my word, what is going on? So ever since then, I'm very careful. The links I click on, the sites I open, if it's not trusted, I don't go in, because you never know what you might find in there. You never know what they might have access to as well too.
Yes, and and it goes throughout the company. Like a company needs to have a culture of security. A company needs to have a culture of data privacy, of understanding whatever it is that you're working on. You know, who are the authorized users for that information? Not everybody needs to see everything. The design team may not need to know what's going on in accounting. That there needs to be
yes, exactly,
appropriate authorizations, and so it starts at the top. It has to have that. They have that governance, risk, and compliance mindset. And if they don't, that becomes a problem. And that's why I think the awareness is so important. And so it's from the bottom to the top, or the top to the bottom. I mean, there's a culture that's created by the top, but everybody, like you said, doesn't matter where in the company that you are, can be a target of what you were talking about, phishing with the emails. And there's phishing and smishing and all of the others, whether it's coming to you as a phone call, whether it's coming to you as text, all the ways. And, I get spam calls every single day now. There's not a day that I don't get a call that doesn't say spam risk on it.
Wow. But okay, I had a question, Joe, because now you are more like a cybersecurity expert. Because sometimes the target is not only those who are digitally savvy or tech savvy. There are some people who have like very limited knowledge about tech. What do you think can be incorporated to help these people to be more aware? Because I believe that there are some areas that maybe that they are not aware that they can even have cybersecurity attacks and all.
There are three vulnerable populations. One vulnerable population is older people who just did not grow up with tech, or just have a low tech experience. And I think they grew up in a time where it was much more trusting. Before tech, you just trusted people. And you even our news environment. And I think this is kind of globally. We all, in the older days, everybody watched the same news channel and then came up with their own opinion. Now we have these very niche news channels that are have a lot of bias and perspective, and are essentially propaganda in one direction or another. And they're meant to sort of emotionally charge you and make you angry about things and put you in a position of us versus them. So there's all of that. So I think that maybe now it's just a different mindset of how trusting we are of people. And so I think that there's a certain trust that they have, that if somebody calls and is being helpful. So my father's a good example of this. Somebody, and like you talked about, they gave you your password. They mirrored his computer bank account in some ways that it sort of looked like it was one of those like, oh, we're refunding you, and then and it was very simple tech. It was low tech. They got to him through his email, and then he called, and then next thing you knew, I literally was like, Dad, I was there, and I was like, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, I have to go because I have to go get this guy gift cards because he over refunded me, and now he's going to lose his job if I don't give him gift cards. Yeah. And I was like, Dad, I'm coming with you. And I came with, and he was like in a trance. He had this guy on the phone, and it was like, he was in a trance. And I was like, hang up. He's like, I can't. Finally, I was like, I got him to hang up. And then I said, who is it? He's like, oh, it's Norton or something. I'm like, great. What's their real phone number? Call them. Like, if you ever get a scam notice that says, and it flashes on your screen. I've had ones that came to him and they had an alarm going. I just hit silent. I hit mute because he's panicking because this alarm went off. And those are called scareware. They're not the malware that your computer's not infected, but you've gone to a browser that they just are like, they're trying to just say, your computer's been taken over. And with that is, so they're trying to scare money out of you. And my mom even said she fell for that. So that's one vulnerable community, is because they're like, your computer will blow up if you don't send us $300. So I think those are people who are just not that tech savvy, who can get scared and conned really easily. Yeah. That's one community. A second community are teenagers. They're just not aware of the ways of the world, and they're on tech. They have phones. They're on digital and social media, and they just don't know what they don't know, and they're very vulnerable to being all sorts of things. I mean, I think it's really, really important to keep kids and teens and just younger people safe online. Anything, even I say kids, but they're adults in their early 20s who are getting their first bank accounts and getting their first credit cards to really understand how to protect their assets. And when somebody comes at them saying, oh, you owe us money, that they don't, and yet they are trying to sort of, find their way in the world, it is important that they're educated on how they can be targeted. And then I think a third population are, you can call it immigrant, refugee, migrant, those who are not fully aware of the laws and rules and regulations of the land and are trying to get residency and are trying to seek protection, trying to be safe, trying to find their way. And they can so easily be targeted because someone says the government wants money from you, or the government they don't know who to trust. They don't know what information is real. And a lot of the scams we get in the US are about, oh, your social security number has been hacked. Like, that's not a thing. Or somebody's got a lawsuit against you, but call us today and we'll stop. And like, that's not how the legal system works. But they don't know that. And so they are targeted because they just don't know. And so I think it's really important for them to speak to people in their community and get consensus around, what's safe and what's not safe, and protect each other. But I think those are the three very vulnerable categories of people. But also small businesses who don't think of like, oh, I need a cybersecurity plan. I worked with a lot of small businesses, and they're targets of spinning hacks. Like, for example, when they release credit cards on the dark web, and they'll just have hundreds of thousands of credit card numbers. And the hackers don't know if these credit card numbers are good or not good, if they've been reported stolen or not. So what they'll do is they'll target a low security website. So somebody who's just decided to set up their own business with their own credit card processing. And overnight, while the business owner is not noticing, they run thousands and thousands of credit cards in milliseconds. They just run them. And the ones that hit, the small business owner wakes up in the morning and is like, oh, I got all these purchases. I got 5 purchases overnight to a website that maybe makes, one a week. And so they're happy, not realizing that that's not if they actually were to ship the product, they would lose double the money because it's not a real purchase. All that they were trying to do was trying to see, does this credit card work? Because if it does, then they'll go make a bigger purchase. Then they'll really sort of do theirs. So it's just a test. But that business owner got charged, it may be pennies for every single transaction that ran, but 10,000 ran in an hour. So if they don't put blocks on how many transactions can run, they will get now that business owner now has a $5,000 bank charge.
Whoa. No, my word, this is really deep.
So that's another. And then I was just, as we were talking, thinking about, Facebook Marketplace is another one, because people were trying to hack into my Facebook, and I was like, what do you want with my Facebook? Because I wasn't understanding where's the money on Facebook. And then I finally understood. I actually took a news story to explain it to me, that they want me because I have a seasoned account. I'm a real person with real friends and connections. And so that they can then get into my marketplace, they can run their scams. They can try to sell sneakers or whatever products they have to my community, or they can sell anything else on marketplace to strangers. And the stranger will look it up and say, oh, she looks real. She looks legit. And then they can do their scam that way. So there's so many. And then of course you've got romance scams. Like those are the big ones. Now I wouldn't call that necessarily in the cybersecurity realm, but it's still, things that are being in the digital world. Like there are digital dangers of people who have fantasies that there's the right partner out there for me. I haven't met them yet, but these people are so good. They make you feel so loved. They give you so much attention. They have a script. It may be the best relationship some people have ever been in. They were, until their money is gone, and then that person disappears.
Wow. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, and not, I mean, I was going to say, in the early days, the beginnings of this, we all had the Nigerian prince. He had money for us. If we would only send him a few dollars, he would unlock the millions of dollars that had been left to us. My interest in cybersecurity is just that part of, it is important to be self-protective and to protect your company, protect yourself, protect your family. That's where that comes from.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think this is an information a lot of people need to hear more about, because I believe there are a lot of people that are not cybersecurity conscious at all. That's why you hear people that tell you that I haven't changed my password for over 3 years. And usually most of them are easy targets. I still can remember there are a lot of people have tried to help activate. You need two-factor authentication on all your applications. It doesn't matter which of them. It's very important to have it there, because if they have access to, because sometimes they even have access to your mail, you'll be surprised that they log into your email, delete whatever messages that comes in, and you're not even aware all of those things happened when you were having your sweet sleep. So it's very important for every single one to be cybersecurity aware.
Yeah. I appreciate you sort of saying there's an area of expertise that I have, but I think in some ways I'm also very much a beginner. And I think what I like to sort of refer to everybody in our community as both is starters and leaders, and starters who are on their way to becoming leaders, because we can be anywhere in the journey. And on some levels, when I talk about having all of these things and feeling like I'm going in all of these different directions, and then it comes back around and I'm like, no, it's all the same direction, because I'm interested, my work that I want to pursue is related to government. And a lot of the government agencies that I'm looking at for future internships, future work, all have cybersecurity at the core of their mission. So my job may be as a geospatial analyst, but I have to understand and respect the policies, the protocols, and everything that I need to do to in order to keep my job, and or even to get that job. They want people who are cyber aware, because you are protecting national security. You're likely to be getting a security clearance to do that job. I mean, there's internships, you can't walk into the building without a security clearance.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily see that my future is going to be, on the cybersecurity team, but where I see myself is being in an agency that has cybersecurity at the core of their mission.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I think that that's when I look at sort of, that's the government agencies, because my first internship is going to start in the fall, and I'm going to be working for a government agency as a geospatial analyst. And they're more on the science side than the intelligence side. But a lot of the studies that I'm doing, I think are leading me to the intelligence side. And so I think that's where I'm like, okay, getting this foundation in cybersecurity. But it also worked out that because I want these internships, I need to stay in school a little bit longer. So what happened was I'm finishing my geospatial studies, and they never talk about cybersecurity and geospatial ever. Like, they talk about science and possibility and pretty maps and, how we work with data analytics. And I mean, it's a different thing. And design, like, you've got to make your maps beautiful and useful. And there's just so much technology, and there's just so much, there's so much to the map making, cartography, spatial data science that I've never once in any conversation heard anybody talk about cybersecurity. But I was like, wait a second, you're dealing with data. You're dealing with, so there should be data protection and data privacy, and there's rules around how you manage and store data. And so I had extra room in my schedule, and I was also thinking deeply about how do I extend my graduation date so that I can take advantage of these internships that I'm now ready for, but I wasn't ready for a year ago. And because of the security clearance, the application is due a year before, and they don't want you to be aspirational to say, oh, here's all the things that you want that I'll learn the next year. They want you to have those the day you fill out your application. And so I'm there now. That's why this coding hole that I've been on has been so deep, because I knew that those were the skills that I would be asked for, and they needed to be today's skills, not I'll get those tomorrow skills. And so now I'm in law school doing a privacy law and cybersecurity certificate. So it's law school not to be a lawyer, but it's law school to be trained up in all of the legal aspects of privacy law and cybersecurity. So I'm studying cybersecurity from a legal perspective.
That's interesting. And I think that's an area that people really do not know much about. And that's really interesting. And I'm surprised. I think you should start documenting a few things about it, because I think a lot of people would want to hear more about this.
As I go further in geospatial, I think having this sort of cybersecurity and this machine learning piece to my geospatial will actually kind of give me a niche. And I think part of that secondary thought that I was having is the niche is when you're intersectional, when you have two different parts of your expertise. So there's one person in our community, her expertise is cybersecurity and machine learning. And she tells us how you can use machine learning to improve your cybersecurity operations, because it can help find the outliers or the unusual activity, or it is able to sort of see the patterns and then see when the pattern breaks, because that's usually when you have a breach.
Wow. You've said a lot about cybersecurity, and now it's getting me really interested to find out how cybersecurity and design would be able to function in a lot of ways. Because right now, like you mentioned earlier, we have passwords on our phones, we have locks on our doors, and all of these are designed as well too. So at some point, there is a part of cybersecurity that has to do with design. Now you're pushing me to go and learn new stuff.
Well, there is because there's a threshold between, and this is another thing that we learn in law school, is your legal responsibility isn't to protect against cybersecurity attacks. The reality is cybersecurity attacks will happen, and you can't prevent that. You cannot prevent a cybersecurity attack from happening. But what you can do is take reasonable precautions. You should have the staff in place. You should have the policies. You should have the procedures. You should be doing your best, but you cannot, your best is going to be an 80% mark. Your best is not 100% mark. So there's
100%.
there's always going to be vulnerabilities. There's always going to be new technology that's released that needs a patch, that has that again, there's ways that people can exploit it. The design happens in understanding what are people willing to do, because design is not just making things beautiful, it's also making things useful. It's the user experience of this. And so
it's a series of processes.
Yes, and there's a lot that goes into, because of my my Google Coursera, I am almost done with the UI UX certificate. And so I've been learning a lot about how we apply empathy, and how you do the research, and how you talk to people, and how you really understand. And the design is so much about seeing things from other people's point of view, and how they approach something, and it's functionality, it's usability, it's readability, like all of those things. And I think they were saying, like, for example, if you as a company require your staff, like, okay, every day change your password and make it 16 characters and don't write it down, like, it's like people are like, we're not going to do that. So it's finding that balance, because you said then there's other people who, use the name of their cat and change it once every 3 years. And so it's finding a balance of what is appropriate, what will people actually do that they don't find too difficult or too disruptive.
Yeah.
And so it's fine. And to me, that has a lot to do with user experience and with the empathy part of it. Like, what is an appropriate ask of people versus something that is draconian and everybody's just going to hate it and not really use it, even though it would totally keep you safe. It's not functional.
Yeah, that's true. And yet there are even a lot of applications as well too. I think there was one time we were trying to create I think it was a sign up for a particular platform, and how the password was to be imputed was a very large part about it. Most times there are some platforms that will tell you have to add a character, and if you do not add a character, you are not moving forward unless you had at least one character to your password. They give you sometimes the length of the password and all of that, and all of that's pretty important, because in as much as all of the experiences is wonderful, your application, it has to be safe for the people as well, because you're collecting data, and data is the person. If anyone has access to those data, they have access to your users as well too. So like you said, it's very important to understand the pain points of the users, understanding what works for the users, as well as it's functional for the application. It goes a long way too.
Yeah, so I think as we talk about design and where design fits into it, when you're building an application, especially, you're taking in user information, you do have to think about, what are we asking for them? Is it secure? Is there a password? Are they logging into the site? If they're logging into the site, what data are we collecting? How long do we keep that data for? Do we have an endpoint to when we dispose of that data?
Yeah, that's true. I think there are even some platform. I think if they have your data for a specific period of time, they even send you an email to tell you that, okay, they'll be taking out your data. If you still want to be on the platform, you should follow through a link to fill in some details. But if you don't, that they'll be taking your data off the platform. So those are really very important as well too, because you never know. Because even sometimes you find that you subscribe to some newsletter that you never subscribe to, and you don't know how those happen, and I'm very sure it's as a result of your data gotten out from somewhere.
Yeah, and one of the dangers, and this happened to me, is that a former colleague was applying for a loan, and he ended up sort of saying, oh, I'm going to put your name down for this. And next thing I know is like they aggregate that data. I have no interest in a loan. I don't want a loan, but I get calls still 4 years later because my information got aggregated into a system. And so it goes to one, it goes to many. And they just sell and resell that data. And so that's one of the biggest problems of your data getting breached. Another one for me is my credit card, I have a larger limit credit card. And so and a lot of my, I'll call them sort of business expenses, anything related to sort of content, subscriptions, go on to this larger one. But one monthly reoccurring that I didn't want to be a monthly reoccurring, I know like it took me a while to like look at that statement and say, oh, wait, I never wanted that charge. So after that, I made it so that they text me and email me every time a charge hits that credit card. And so another, just way for people to be safe is when we talk about the world of cybersecurity, it includes your finances.
Mm.
And so even, how a company, like, for example, if you're doing your job and you need to spend money or you need authorization from the company, are they handing you a credit card to make that transaction, or does someone else pay for it? Like, how do you get the services you need to do your job? And that's another way that cybersecurity intersects with design, just your ability to get the services, because you're spending company money. And how are those credit cards kept secure? Or oftentimes, many people within the company have to access a certain service and they sort of share passwords. I remember I worked in a marketing department, and then we just had a spreadsheet, and it was like, oh, this platform, this password, this platform, this password, this platform, this password. And it just kind of went around, and anybody in the company could access it and get into any of those, whether it was a social media account or, any kind of like digital service that we had. It was, really probably not best practice. And so I look at my reality of how, how I've seen businesses do it. And especially when a business is just trying to survive and trying to grow and trying to meet payroll and trying to satisfy customers, like there's this concept of like, oh, we're just too busy. Like, we don't have time for that.
Yeah, that's true. So they just try to make the best of what they have available, so long as the business is growing.
Yes. So I want to turn it, like, we talked a lot about the cyber part of it, which I appreciate and welcome, but I want to turn our conversation back to the Women Techmakers part of it, because that's what brought us together. That is the entity that is behind me. I would not have me as an individual. I could have this as an idea and say, oh, wouldn't this be nice to do something like this? And yet I wouldn't have the motivation, I wouldn't have the structure, I wouldn't have the accountability, I wouldn't have the resources, the ability to be a Women Techmakers and then have this idea and then bring this idea to others and have others say, that's a great idea, we're on board, how can we help you, what do you need? And just see it come together. And like almost pretty much immediately, a community of 40 was just formed. And I've gotten now to know the one-on-one, and now we're starting to set up our group chats, our group calls, getting our mentors involved. And so it wouldn't be possible for me to do this without Women Techmakers.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The community has really played a lot of role. Personally, for me in my career, I think that should be last year. Yeah, that was last year after DEFES, because I was one of the speakers for DEFES in my community. And after that session, there was someone who was in that meeting. It was having another conference majorly on design. And I spoke, my talk during DEFES was majorly from the group mindset, but because I was a designer, and he reached out after DEFES and I was like, okay, we have a program coming up in 2 months. No, it was that same month. He said in 2 weeks, and we would like for you to be one of our speakers. I was like, you said what? I was like, yes, we'd like you to be one of our speakers. Don't worry, we're going to take care of every logistics, your accommodation, your flight ticket. We will take care of everything. And I thought to myself, if it wasn't for community, I'm not sure I would even be on a platform speaking, because the community was what gave that encouragement on like, okay, you can do this. Because it's one thing for you to try to do something, and it's another thing for you to see support, people actually clamor for you that, oh, you're doing this, okay, this is where you can improve, this is how you can be better. And it's just amazing. And also having mentors that can put you through as well and show you what exactly you need to do it's just super amazing. And I really cannot overemphasize how community has helped me. I've had access to a lot of opportunities. I think it was also last year too. I got acquainted in a design organization that's called Rosenfeld. I got into the organization first just as an attendee, and within 1 year, I moved from being just an attendee. I moved into being speaker and then being a facilitator for their different conferences. And when I look back, everything started from the community. Community was what gave me my very first platform. Community was what gave me my very first resources. Community was where I started. I failed so many times there because why? I was trying to build on myself. But looking back now, all of the failures, they've come together and they've created this sort of confidence whereby I can tell myself, okay, I'm not afraid to take up any challenge anymore. If it's something that I have passion for, if it's something I have knowledge or idea about, definitely I would want to get involved in it. So the Women Tech Makers community is amazing. Anyone that I basically know that has come into the community, they've had access to people. You might not even directly have a mentor. You can just even have peers that can walk the journey with you. They basically might just be doing something and you're like, I think there's something I'll be interested in, and just tapping into it, you find out that it's something you can basically do and you just grow from there. So Women Tech Makers community, it's been an amazing experience, honestly speaking. I've had access to opportunities that naturally I wouldn't have had access to. Yeah, being an ambassador, I think it's a good role, a very good role. And one thing I think it exposes you to is a lot of learning, because you're not just representing yourself, you're presenting the brand. So anything you're sharing, it tends to represent the brand as well. So it forces you to learn new stuff. And also, I think it also gives you this sense of leadership development as well too, because a lot of people would be learning from you, and you would want to learn how to position yourself as a leader, how you organize your things, what are the things, the content you show, and all of that. So I think it's a very good experience. For last year, there was a program. It's called Edu Stipend. I signed up to be one of the ambassadors for the program. So it's more like an educational platform where they tend to help a lot of newbies, not just basically for tech, but other professions as well. They give you access to learning resources. Yeah, they even go as far as purchasing laptops for people who want to get into tech and cannot afford it. So I signed up for the ambassador program. That was last year. And one of the projects that I had was to create a career workshop for 2 days. So I created a career workshop for 2 days. I taught the first day, but I had to bring in a guest for the second day. And so it was a really amazing learning experience, because I got to learn about my own self. Because what I was speaking on how to create a good career plan, how to create a development plan, how to identify gaps in your career and how to fill those gaps, I began to understand that I had some gaps as well, because when I was given the workshop, I was identifying my own gaps as well. So it's very interesting for any program you're an ambassador for. It forces you to learn more about yourself. It helps you identify areas that you also can improve in yourself. So I would appreciate anyone who's interested in becoming a Women Tech Makers Ambassador.
At the core of this was inviting starters to become leaders. Like, I think that's for me, it's like, I love being a learner, but I think for me to inspire other people, and I love being a leader, like it just comes very naturally to me. But what a skill that I'm trying to learn, I can even learn it here as I yield the stage back to you, is I know I will always raise my hand. I know I will always speak. I know I will always lead. But my job is to yield to others. And so if anybody in the group wants to lead, it's like, okay, great. How can I support you? If anybody in the group wants to speak, it's like, okay, how can I support you?
I think it takes a lot to be able to move from that to the point you are right now. Because in order for you to actually be a leader, is having to bring people into the form of leadership as well, because it's very easy for one to think that, okay, I want to get this sorted by myself, but it's more satisfying where you are able to show others the ropes, that this is how it's being done, because then they would be able to show others the ropes as well, because that's how the chain reaction keeps happening and all of that. And it takes a lot to get to that point. I think it's a skill on its own as well, too, if I'm permitted to but say that.
Yes. So I am very much having joy in helping to develop other leaders and other speakers. And I think even like I said, in whatever small way, this stage is a forum for that. A lot of the people I've had as guests have said, hey, it's my first time being upon a podcast. And I'm saying, welcome. And last year I was a little shy about doing it as video. I definitely could see the people I was talking to, but my deliverable was audio. And I think a lot of people felt safer that way. They're like, okay, it's audio. This time I'm like, no, I'm doing video first. I want to build and grow on YouTube. I want to sort of play and experiment, like what's possible here, and learn and grow as a creator, and really be someone who speaks about women empowerment, about technology, about geospatial, machine learning, cybersecurity, like intelligence, like those are my themes. Those are kind of what I want to talk about, but also like an underlying theme of growing, learning, transforming, building community, being inspired about what's possible, and then going for it. I actually, and let me say cybersecurity came from one of my interviews. One of the interviews, I was talking to a tech maker, and she was very interested in cybersecurity, and she was, I mean, she had an amazing tech background, but was, I would say new to cybersecurity professionally, and she was trying to apply it to the company that she was in and kind of take on that role, although I don't know kind of to what level of success. But she had just decided, this is the path that I want. This is what I want to do. This is it. And then now it's like a year later, and she's got an amazing job at a huge and well-respected hospital, which is nationally recognized and probably internationally recognized. And it was my conversation with her kind of sparked this like kind of itch of like, what's that? And then it turned out like I was looking for an extra 2 units in my school schedule, and I wandered, there was none for me to take in my program, and I wandered over to the law school, and they said, yeah, we can do limited enrollment. We'll put you in the cybersecurity and cybercrimes course, and which is part of a data privacy and cybersecurity certificate, which includes all sorts of things like regulatory, global. I'm currently in the health privacy law. But the fact that they started me in the cybersecurity class was perfect, because it really gave me the foundation. And then from there, I realized I was looking at my future, and I've had like this conflict, because on one level, I really want the government employment. I want to work for an agency. Like I want to be part of something. But at the same time, I have this content background, and I've always done it for other people. I've never done it for myself. And I've decided, I'm like, I want the time and the space to kind of play here, to sort of at least feel like I can explore what this is and what this looks like. And I realized, I wanted to sort of take the opportunity to do internships. And so everything kind of lined up where I applied and got into the full certificate program. So this will now actually take me for another 2 years of school. So I get 2 years to be an ambassador, create content, be a student, do my internships, and just kind of be free of the commitments and obligations that will come from the regular employment, where I will need to move and show up at certain times and places in ways that are different than where I'm at now. And so anyways, I finally kind of figured out my schedule and my life the way that I needed to. And so when I sort of stepped up to say, I'd like to do more content, I'd like to do more interviews, and just to know people like yourself and others said, how can we support you? How can we help you on that journey? Is so inspiring for me. And so what are some of your goals with Women Tech Makers for yourself over the next year? Where will we see you a year from now?
Okay. So in a year from now, I'm actually trying to work on something, because the Google program is basically majorly on some of the Google tools, but as a designer, I'm trying to create this space whereby we have like design workshops and research workshops. I want to see how I can make design thinking something that is not just applicable, because it's something applicable to design, but I want to see how I can introduce it into helping people to also grow their careers and also to be able to make like some major changes or to be able to create some major things in their life as well. So I'm looking forward to creating more safe space for people to grow into their careers, because with the Women Techmakers program, it's easy to reach out to these young women. Some of them they don't believe in themselves, what they're doing. Some of them are still in their shell. Some still do not believe that they have what it takes to make it in tech. So in the next 1 year, I want to create as more safe space for these women to come in, grow into their careers, grow into being what they're meant to be, which is thriving in tech. And so that's what I want to do in the next 1 year, creating a safe space for women in tech.
I love that, and it's needed and it's necessary. And I think that's another theme that I found is that I'm involved in a lot of things. Like, for example, as the Microsoft Student Learn Ambassador, it's all genders. The only limitation there is it's a student group. And when I'm no longer a student, then you can evolve to a VP and other things. But this is a student group. But a lot of the other groups that I'm involved in are women. I'm part of Women Techmakers. I'm a member of Women in Cybersecurity. I'm a member of Women in Machine Learning. I'm a member of Women in Plus in Geospatial. And I have finding that I'm absolutely thriving and loving these communities where women can support each other, empower each other, give space, give voice to things that are unique to women. I think a theme that came up when I did my first audio summit was we as women are sitting at a table we did not build.
Yeah.
So we work in a lot of structures that we have to bend and accommodate to. Women have different considerations that are different than men.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I think one of the things that women need a lot of support, because like you said, they wear multiple hats. They have two full-timers taking care of the family, and then they would have to focus on their jobs as well. So that's why it's very important to be empathetic towards women and also show lots of support as well too.
Yeah, they're and I mean I know of the women in our program. I mean, they're wives, they're mothers. Some of them are single mothers. Like there's a lot going on, or they're caretakers for parents. I mean, there's these other roles that they have that aren't always spoken about, that aren't compensated for, and that yet they're very motivated to build their careers and be leaders and do all the things that they need to do, and that that this all is part of what makes them who they are and gives them that strength and gives them that power. And so I want to acknowledge that I know that our sort of saying, hey, just go for it, isn't without context, isn't without all these other responsibilities and blessings. I mean, they take our time, but they give us so much in return. So but those are things that and I'm not saying men don't. Actually, if anything, if I can just bring men back into the conversation, I think one of the things that a big takeaway of redesigning corporate culture isn't to give women more flexibility, but it's to give men more flexibility so they can do more and be better partners and be the ones who can also take their kids to the doctor's appointment. Not only having women having that task. I know I've been in some women calls where they were saying that's one thing that just I was the only one in my kids were growing up who ever took my kids to the doctor. I had to work to do that. My husband never did. So I think part of being leaders as women is also embracing the conversation of how we need to evolve some of our larger structures and thought patterns about work and what works for women. As women, we figure things out the best we can.
Yeah.
So
We always do.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always an amazing time speaking with you.